Trecho de entrevista com Vossa Excelência Reverendíssimo Bispo Donald Sanborn. Canal original Roman Catholic Media. Tradução e legenda www.missacatolica.com.br. Pergunta: por que o senhor volta sempre ao assunto da missa Unacum? Canal original do vídeo Roman Catholic Media. Tradução e legenda www.missacatolica.com.br. Apoie nosso primeiro documentário. A Santa Igreja Católica nunca errou, nem errará jamais. Mais informações www.missacatolica.com.br. E-mail missacatolica@protonmail.com.
Because the unicum, that little word, together with, it means in Latin, is a string that holds the Catholic to the Novus Ordo. That presence of Bergoglio in the Catholic Mass as Pope, see, Papa Nostro, that's key, is a string that holds the Catholic to the Bergoglio. That string must be cut. Otherwise, you will end up in the Novus Ordo. In order for a Mass to be Catholic, it must not only have a Catholic liturgy, that is, a traditional Mass, so something that has been used and approved by the Church for centuries. That is, of course, true. But it must also, to be Catholic, be offered in union with the Catholic hierarchy. Because the Mass is not merely a devotional service, a single devotional service, like the Stations of the Cross. It is an act of the whole mystical body. Ultimately, it is the act of Christ himself as head of the Church. So every Mass is in a way a single act of the Church, even though it is said all over the world and many times all over the world. It is a single act together with the crucifixion and the Last Supper. Everything is in a single act, each in its own way. And so in order for that to be Catholic worship, it must be the act of the whole Church. And in order to be the act of the whole Church, it must be subject to and offered by a priest who is approved by the local hierarchy and ultimately by the Pope, and who offers the Mass in union with the Catholic hierarchy and ultimately the Pope. That's why those things are in the canon. And what is very important is not so much the word Francis, but Francis, our Pope, and so, our bishop. See, if you were merely saying we're praying for Francis, you see, that's a lot of them say that, SSPX. We're praying for Francis, that he come around, that he convert, like St. Paul. And say, well, that's fine that we pray for Francis. That's not the place to pray for Francis, but that's fine that we pray for him. And the Church prays for heretics in her liturgy, the conversion of heretics. But what comes after Francis is key. Papa Nostro. Oh, I think it comes before. Papa Nostro, and then Antistite Nostro, that means bishop. You are recognizing, that's a formal recognition of those people as Catholic hierarchy. Now, if they are false hierarchy, if they are false popes and false bishops, as we say, then to offer the Mass in union with a false hierarchy puts the Mass outside the Catholic Church. That is the problem, and people don't understand that. And I'm talking about convinced sedevacantists who go to that Mass, to the Unicum Mass, thinking, well, I disagree with it, but I can still go because it's a Catholic Mass and the priest, is in good conscience about it, and he doesn't mean to be in union with a false hierarchy, and he's a good priest, and he gives nice sermons, and the music is beautiful, and it's a nice church. This is typically the argument. And I don't want to go to the trouble of going many miles and going to Mass in a more humble circumstance, and where there are fewer people and there's no great music and the sermon might not be as good, etc. I've heard this argument. I would call those people, they prefer Herod's palace to the Bethlehem of Christ. In other words, they are saying, we'll stay in Herod's comfy palace, where that is in the Una Cum Mass with Bergoglio, our Pope, rather than go to the humble situation of perhaps a non-Una Cum Mass. They will go there and worship in a truly Catholic Mass that is purposely not in union with the false hierarchy of the Novus Ordo. These are capital points. And I would say that those people who think that way have a Protestant notion of the Mass. They see the Mass as in a Protestant way. That is, that the priest is there to excite your faith. That this is an individual act of devotion, as I said, like Stations of the Cross or Miraculous Medal devotions. That this is an individual devotion, and that I am the one that is principally the doer or the actor of the worship. And that the priest is there basically to lead me in this. That is thoroughly Protestant, totally 100% Protestant. The Catholic notion of worship is that the priest is the doer and the actor of the worship. He is at the altar. He is the one offering your sacrifice. And what he does, you are doing as well. And you cannot exempt yourself from what he is doing. If he is in union with Bergoglio, then so are you in your worship. And you are offering that Mass from the hands, the dirty hands of Bergoglio, Jorge Bergoglio, pretending to be a Roman pontiff. You cannot avoid that. I use the analogy of getting on an airplane. You've paid your ticket, you voluntarily get on it, and then you get up in the middle of the aisle and say, I disagree with where this airplane is going. So these people think that by disagreeing with the priest, that they're okay. The people in the aisles would say to you, are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? You paid your ticket, you got on voluntarily, and now you say you don't want to go where this airplane is going? Are you some sort of a nut? It's absurd. Why? Because all of those people on the airplane are bound to what the pilot is doing. They are doing what he is doing. If he flies someplace, they are willing to fly to that place. You can't get on the airplane voluntarily and at the same time dissent from what the pilot is going to do. See, so the same thing is true of worship. You cannot get into the pew and actively participate in an unicum mass and say, well, I'm not unicum. It's impossible. In the mind, that's impossible. You're assenting and dissenting at the same time. It's impossible to do those two things. So, but if you have a Protestant mentality, you can say, well, it doesn't matter what he's doing. He's exciting my faith. And, Bishop Williamson said this. There was a woman, a famous speech that he gave in Connecticut a few years ago. A woman said, I can't, for some reason, always get to the traditional Mass, and can I go to the new Mass? And he said, whatever nurtures your faith, whatever nourishes your faith. And he told her that she could, as long as she would not be scandalized and, and so forth, a few conditions. But whatever nourishes your faith, that is thoroughly 100% Protestant. The nourishing of the faith by the Mass is secondary and accidental to the action of the Mass. Yes, naturally, any Catholic Mass is going to nourish the faith, but that is secondary and accidental to the action of the Mass. But if you put that in first place, then you could go to a Buddhist monastery if that nourishes your faith. I mean, you could do anything. And you see, that's what the Protestant says, that the altar is in my heart. The altar is not up at the front of the church. The altar is in my heart, and all of the ceremonies of his service are meant to excite his heart. See, it's Protestant.
And I have noticed maybe the problem on the part of the lay people is that they do not understand the difference between something which is subjectively correct and something that is objectively wrong or correct. And they say, if the mass is valid and the priest means well, there's a subjective intention of the priest, I can go to that mass no matter how it's off, no matter if it is una cum or not. So again, the subjective intentions of the priest plus the validity of the rite.
Yes,
that's the only thing that they consider.
Yes. We live in an age of subjectivism, and people should understand that things become justified if you think it's okay. That there's no objective morality, and there's no objective truth. This came about in the late 18th century with Immanuel Kant, that the mind is not subject to the object outside, but you make reality your own by massaging what your experience. You have an experience, and it becomes real for you. You see, that's Immanuel Kant, and ever since, philosophy and the general mentality of the population, even if they don't know a word of philosophy, is subjectivism. That if it's all right for me, if I think it's okay, then fine. And you see this in the abandonment of the natural law. See, natural law is very objective. There's nature, and we have to obey nature, otherwise we sin. Well, if I have different feelings and so forth, and this is the way God made me, so this is the stupid things that they say. It's all right, you see, and I'm okay with it, and so Catholics are infected by that too, and it's just false. The mind is made to know what's outside, and our minds are subject to. That's why it's called the subject to the object, which informs our minds, and we are bound to the objective reality that is outside of us. And so the objective reality is, despite whatever good intentions that priest has, he is una cum. He is offering that mass in union with a false hierarchy, because you could justify anything by good intentions if you follow that. If I murder somebody because God told me to do it. You see, there's a lot of people that do that, that they think God has told them to go murder someone. Well, they did so in good intention. They thought they were following God's orders. That may excuse them because of insanity or some other reason of excuse, but that does not justify it. You see, that's a very important point.
Yes, another problem, Your Excellency, is that there are many sedevacantis priests that believe that it is permissible to attend the Una Cum Mass, and they even tell the faithful to go if they don't have any other place to go to Mass.
Yes, that's for two reasons. One, for the reasons that I said already, but also because they are opinionists, and they're saying that whether he is the Pope or not is a matter of opinion. It's something that is discussed by theologians. You could go either way on it. It does not matter. It does not affect us. If you're not in agreement with the priest, it doesn't matter, because it's an open question. And the reason why they are opinionists is that they are not seeing the reason why we are doing what we're doing. The reason why we have set up an apostolate against the Novus Ordo is not because we are convinced that the man who claims to be the Pope in Rome is a heretic. Now, just let me give you this scenario. Suppose nothing ever changed in our parishes, but there was somebody in Rome who was like Bergoglio, saying crazy things. Well, you could still go to Mass in your parish. It would be up to the church to move against him and to do whatever is necessary to stifle him or take him out of the papacy. It would not affect your daily practice of the faith. It would not affect the catechism, it would not affect anything else, as long as he were merely a personal heretic. So we're not doing this because he's a personal heretic. We are doing this because he is forcing upon the Catholic Church a false religion. All of these Novus Ordo popes, not just Bergoglio, but all of these Novus Ordo popes are forcing this upon the Catholic Church so that I cannot find any more the Catholic faith in my local parish. If that is true, and it is true, and your presence at a traditional mass, an unauthorized traditional mass, like our own, or unauthorized by the Novus Ordo, like our own, or SSPX, or practically anybody else, if you're there, you're saying implicitly that the Novus Ordo is a false religion. If it were not a false religion, you would be in it. We should all be in it, if it is true Catholicism. So you're saying it's a false religion. Therefore, you're saying that the authority, the supposed authority of the Catholic Church, has changed the Catholic religion into something false that cannot be practiced by Catholics. If that is true, then the Catholic Church has defected. Then it is not protected by the promises of Christ. Then Christ is not with it, because it has gone off the rails. It has gone into a ditch, because it is poisoning the faithful, officially. Because that is contrary to faith, we must work back and say, well, then it is impossible that that be the authority of the Church. And so this is not a matter of opinion. This is an absolute certitude demanded by faith itself to say that these people are not the authority of the Church. Otherwise, we become logically bound to deny the indefectibility of the Church. So the priests, the traditional and sedevacantist priests who are telling people to go to the Unicum Mass don't understand that. They are approaching it only from the point of view of whether this man is a personal heretic or not. And they're opinionists, so there is a matter of opinion. The Pope issue is a matter of opinion. It is not a matter of opinion. It is an absolute condition of our Catholicism that not only that we profess the Catholic faith, but also that we be subject to the Catholic hierarchy. And to be subject to the Catholic hierarchy means that we cannot be subject to a false hierarchy. So this concerns not some mere little problem of theological, speculation. This concerns our Roman Catholicism, our fidelity to the Catholic Church. And so it is not something that we can go either way on and be open about.
So the priests that accept and even allow the faithful to go to the Unicum Mass, and also the faithful themselves that go to the Unicum Mass, they are actually being scandalous. It's a serious scandal to the faith.
Yes, that's another aspect about it. Let's say I'm a sedevacantist, but the only Mass that I feel is available to me is an Unicum Mass. When you walk in there and actively participate, not as if you're just going for a funeral or a wedding, where you sit in the back, but actively participate as your worship of God, you are making the statement to any reasonable person that you are Unicum, and that you agree with the idea of recognize and resist, which is a pernicious doctrine that is contrary to Catholic faith and practice. And that is the whole principle that SSPX works on, that we are able to flout the laws of the Novus Ordo, to completely ignore them, to act as if they don't exist, to do whatever we please, but at the same time say, we are submitted to the Pope because we recognize him, we have his picture up, we put his name in the canon. That's just a sham of recognition of the Pope. That's a sham. It's phony. And you are giving consent to that by walking in and actively participating in that. You are also seriously scandalizing your children and your family by doing that, because they are going to grow up confused They are going to see the hypocrisy of it as they get older. Children see clearly hypocrisy. They don't make all of the subtle distinctions that adults sometimes make in order to justify their immorality. They see things clearly. What you're doing is sending a message to them that you can act against your conscience. That is very serious, very, very serious. And I think you will be judged for that.
All right, Your Excellency, one more question about this. Basically a message. Which message do you have for those who do not have a mass that is not unacum to go to? So what do you think, do you say to them?
I would say a number of things. Make every effort possible to go to the non-unacum mass, even if it's only a few times a year. They might have to travel a long way in order to find one. So at least they could do that. They should avoid absolutely the unacum mass. They could move if possible. I know that's not possible for a lot of people, but they move to centers where they can practice their faith. I always say to people, if the water dried up where you live, wouldn't you move away? Wouldn't you go into a place where there is water? And of course the answer is yes. Well, the Catholic Mass and the Catholic faith is far more important than the water that you drink, because your body is going to die, but your soul will go on forever, and you need the water of the true Mass, the true sacraments, true doctrine, etc. And a Mass and an apostolate and priests who are Bergoglio free, and not some organization that is looking toward approval, looking constantly for approval from the Novus Ordo. So that's what I and if all else fails, well, now we are streaming our Catholic Mass. The beauty of God's mercy is that you can obtain the same graces by desire if you have an obstacle to the fact. In other words, if you cannot get to Mass, the desire to go to Mass, people make spiritual communions. That this desire is a substitute in God's eyes for the graces that you would receive by being there physically. Because it's not like the Old Testament, which was all physical. It's the religion. The New Testament is the religion of the Spirit, and St. Paul is very clear about that. So that's why there is something called baptism of desire. If you have an obstacle to baptism of water for whatever reason, the will to live by God's laws and to know God as He is, and to is an implicit will to receive baptism. And so, by attending the Mass online, I would say that God would grant you all the graces that He would grant you if you were physically there. See, so I think you should profit from modern technology and do that. It's very easy. And there are many masses, not only our own, but many masses that you could look at.